Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more Socrates. Today we are going to be diving back into Plato's Republic. We will be continuing the dialogue of Socrates in Book 4 of the Republic. Uh, we've talked about what should be allowed into the perfect city, right? That is the discussion that we are having, and we are just going to pick up and continue this discussion. So, here Adeimantus interrupted and said, "Now, Socrates, what would be your defense if something were to maintain that you are not making these men very happy, and it is all their own fault, since, although the city is in truth theirs, they do not enjoy a single benefit from her, unlike the counterparts in other cities who own land, build beautiful grand houses, and acquire furniture to match, who offer private sacrifices to the gods, entertain guests, and indeed, as you were saying just now, have acquired gold and silver and everything else that is supposed to belong to people who are going to be blessed. In fact, he might maintain they look almost like paid auxiliaries who sit about in the city with nothing to do except keep watch." "Yes," said I, "and they do all this in return for their basic provisions, receiving no wages in addition to such provisions, as everyone else does. They will not even be able to travel abroad privately if they wish to, or pay for female companions, or indulge in any other kinds of expenditure, like those who are generally regarded as happy. You are leaving out these objections and a whole host of others like them. In that case," said he, "let those objections also be included. So you were asking how we shall conduct our defense?" "Yes. We shall, in my opinion, find whatever needs to be said by proceeding along the same track as before. Indeed, we shall say that it would be no surprise if these people, living in this way, are also the happiest people, even though we are not founding our city with a view to this, so that one particular group among us will be especially happy, but so that the whole city will be happy as it can possibly be. For though we thought that in a city like this we would find justice to the greatest extent, and by contrast we would find injustice to the greatest extent, even in the worst managed city, and by observing them carefully, decide the issue we have been investigating for so long. At the moment, then, we are, I believe, forming the happy city, not by considering a few of its people in isolation and proposing that people like this are happy, but by considering the whole city. We shall look at its opposite presently. Indeed, it is as if we are painting a statue, and someone came along and said we are not using the most beautiful pigments on the most beautiful parts of the figure, because we had painted the eyes, the most beautiful part, not with purple, but with black. We would seem to be offering a reasonable defense by saying, 'Strange man, do not presume that we should paint eyes so beautiful that they do not even look like eyes, and the same goes for other parts too. But look, and see whether we make the whole thing beautiful by applying the appropriate pigments to each part. And indeed, in the present case, do not compel us to attach happiness of this sort to our guardians, a happiness that will turn them into anything other than guardians, for we know we could dress our farmers in fine robes, and deck them out with gold, and bid them work the land whenever they felt like it. We could have our potters reclined by the fire, left to right, drinking and feasting, with the potter's wheel beside them, to make as many pots as they felt like making. We could also make all the others happy in this way, so that the whole city would then be happy. But do not encourage us in this direction, since if we take your advice, our farmer will not be a farmer, nor will our potter be a potter, nor will any of the other functions from which our city is constituted retain their character. Now, in the case of the other functions, this is of less account, for shoe menders who are debased and corrupted, and who pretend to be shoemakers when they are not, are no threat to the city. But when guardians of the city and its laws seem like guardians when they are not, then you see they utterly destroy the entire city. And what is more, they alone hold the key to the city being well governed and happy. So if we are producing true guardians of the city who are least harmful to it, while our critic is referring to some farmers feasting at the festival, not in a civic society, then he is describing something else besides a city. So, we should consider whether to appoint the guardians with a view to providing them with the utmost happiness, or with a view of ensuring such happiness for the city as a whole. Compelling or persuading our guardians to cooperate in this, so that they will be the very best artificers of their own work, and the same will apply to all the others. And so, with the entire city flourishing and well managed, we should allow each of the types to have a share in happiness in the way that its nature allows. Yes, said he, this sounds well to me. Well then, said I wonder if the following point, related to this one, will sound reasonable to you. What is it? In the case of the other artificers, consider whether there are factors that corrupt them so they become bad artificers. What sort of factors? Wealth and poverty, said I. How so? As follows. Once he has become wealthy, do you think a potter will still be willing to attend to his craft? Not at all, he replied. Will he become lazy and less interested than he was before? Very much so. Will he not become a worse potter? That too, very much so. Yes, indeed. And when, due to poverty, he is unable to provide the tools or whatever else his craft requires, his workmanship will be poorer, and he will teach his sons and anyone else he instructs to be inferior artificers. Indeed, he will. Then, on account of both factors, poverty and wealth, what the crafts produce will be inferior, and the artificers themselves will be inferior. Apparently. Then these, it seems, are additional factors which our guardians must watch out for by every possible means, in case they creep into the city unnoticed. What sorts of factors? Wealth and poverty, said I, since one provides luxury, idleness, and disturbance, while the other leads to lack of freedom and bad workmanship, in addition to the disturbance. Entirely so, Socrates, said he, but please consider how our city will be able to go to war when it has acquired no wealth, especially if she is compelled to go to war against a large and wealthy city. It is obvious, said I, that it would be more difficult to fight against a single city like this, but against two such cities it would be easier. What do you mean? Said he. First, if they need to do battle, will they not be fighting against wealthy men when they themselves are trained warriors? Well, yes, said he, this is so. Now, Adeimantus, I asked, do you not think a single boxer, very well trained, could easily fight two rich fat fellows who are not boxers at all? Probably not, he said, not at the same time anyway. Not even if he were allowed to retreat, said I, and then turn around and strike the first man coming at him? And he were to do this repeatedly under the baking sun. Would not a man like this get the better of quite a number of such fellows? Indeed, said he, that would be no surprise. And do you not think rich people have more knowledge and experience of boxing than warfare? I do, he replied. So, our trained warriors will easily do battle with 2 or even 3 times their own number. I shall concede the point, he said, for it seems to me that what you are saying is correct. What if we send an embassy to the other city, telling them the truth? Although we have no use for gold or silver, you do. So, fight alongside us and take the wealth that the others have. Do you think anyone who heard this offer would choose to fight against tough, lean dogs rather than fight alongside them against soft, fat sheep? No, I do not think so, said he, but if one accumulates all the wealth of the others, watch out, in, in case it constitutes a danger to the one that is not wealthy. How fortunate you are, said I, that you think anything else deserves to be called a city except the sword we are equipping. What should we call it then? We should speak about the others, said I, and it's more than one city. For each of them is not a city, but a combination of many cities. As people say in jest, two at least, one of rich folk, and the other of poor, both at war with each other. That's not today, right? And in each of these there are many which you would be totally incorrect to regard as one. But if you regard them as many cities distributing the wealth of some to others, and the powers too, and even the peoples themselves, you will always have access to many allies and have few enemies. As long as your city is managed sound-mindedly, and as was just arranged, it will be the greatest city, not in reputation, I do not mean that, but the greatest city. If even there are only 1,000 defenders among her ranks. For you'll not easily find a single city that is great in this way, among Greeks or barbarians, although there are many that seem to be many times greater than ours. Or do you think otherwise? By Zeus, I do not, said he. Would this not be the perfect criterion for our rulers in determining what size to make the city, and, accordingly, the extent of the territory they should mark off, setting the rest aside? What criterion, he asked. I think of it as follows, I said. Let it keep growing as long as it remains one city. It may grow thus far and no farther. That is a good way to proceed, said he. In that case, should we give this additional instruction to our guardians to be on their guard in every respect to ensure the city be not small nor seem to be great, but be one and sufficient? Quite a commonplace instruction, surely, said he. And there is an even more commonplace instruction than this, which we mentioned previously, saying that it would be necessary in situations in which any ordinary folk are born to the guardians, that these folk should be sent away to other ordinary folk. And if any special offspring are born to the ordinary folk, these should be sent away to the guardians. And this is intended to show that even in the case of the other citizens, whether anyone is suited to by nature is the task each should attend to, one person to one particular task, so that each, by practicing the task that is in his own, would become not many but one, and in this way, then the entire city would naturally come to be one rather than many. Yes, said he, that is more insignificant instruction than that other one. Adiamantus, my good man, said I, we are not giving them a lot of important instructions as someone might presume. No, they are all quite minor, provided they guard the so-called one important thing. I should say, sufficient rather than important. What is that, he said. Education and upbringing, said I. For if by educated they become reasonable men, they will easily see all of this quite clearly. And anything else we are leaving out at the present, including the acquisition of women, marriages, the procreation of children, they will see all of these should be conducted as much as possible so as to make all things common to friends. Yes, said he, that would be most correct. And indeed, said I, the state, once it is set in motion properly, proceeds like a developing circle. For a worthy upbringing, the education that is kept safe produces good natures, and worthy natures in turn, by acquiring an education of this sort, become even better than their predecessors in general, and especially in their breeding, or as is the case with other creatures. Quite likely, said he. So, to put it briefly, those who are to care for the city must hold fast to education so that it does not get corrupted without them noticing. They should, rather, guard this against everything, against any innovation in gymnastics or in music, contrary to our direction. They should be on their guard, as best they can, when anyone says that the song the singer latest sings, men heed the more. Yeah. For fear someone might presume the poet, perhaps speaking of not of new song, but of new manner of singing, and is praising this. This sort of thing should not be praised, nor should the poet be understood in this way. Indeed, one must be cautious about change to a new form of music, as it poses a threat to the whole. Since the manners of music do not change without the most important civic laws changing too. So says Damon, and I trust him. One must be cautious about change to a new form of music, as it poses a threat to the whole. Since the manners of music do not change without the most important civic laws changing too. So says Demon, and I trust him. Now, we have talked before about Demon. Demon is Socrates' voice, his consecrated demon who leads him correctly. Like, I got that wrong in the first video, but I corrected that. And this voice leads him correctly. And it's telling him that you should be careful about the music you change. I wholeheartedly agree with that. You should be very cautious with music. That's why we do what we do in the reactions, right? You got to be careful with the music that you consume and what it leads you to. This was 3,000 years ago. Well, you can count me as someone who trusts him too, said Adeimantus. Then, said I, it is here in the music, it seems, that the guardians must found their citadel. This, at any rate, said he, is where lawlessness easily creeps in unawares. Yes, said I, since it is regarded as a sort of amusement that does not do any harm. Nor indeed does it do so, said he, except by establishing itself, little by little. It flows gently into habits and behavior, and from these it emerges larger, and enters the arrangements between the citizens. And then, from these private arrangements, it assails the laws and the Constitution with unrestrained licentiousness, Socrates, until finally it overturns everything, private as well as public. Indeed, said I, is that what it does? I think so, said he. And in that case, are we saying, initially, should not our own children be involved straight away in play that adheres to law? Since if play itself becomes lawless and children do likewise, it is impossible that they would develop into law-abiding, earnest men. Yes, how could they, said. Well, when the children, having made a good start at playing, adopt a lawful spirit through music, then in contrast to those other cases, this accompanies them in everything and develops them, setting right anything in the city that was previously cast down. True indeed, said he. Then these people discover for themselves, said I, the seemingly trivial regulation, all of which their predecessors subverted. What sort of regulations? This sort. Appropriate silence of the young in the presence of their elders, for instance. Offering them seats and standing up before them. Care of parents, hairstyles and clothes, shoes, physical appearance in general. Anything else of that sort. Do you not think so? I do. But to institute laws for these, I think silly. For having been instituted as laws, verbal or written, they are surely not acted upon, nor do they last. No, how could they? It is likely, at any rate, adiumantists, that the direction set by their education determines the sort of thing that follows thereafter, or does like not always call forth like. Of course. And finally, then, I believe we would declare that it turns into something single, complete, and active, whether it is good or the opposite. Inevitably, he said. That, I said, is why I, for one, would not go further and attempt to institute laws for this sort of thing. Well, that is reasonable, said he. But by the gods, said I, what about commercial affairs and all the arrangements with one another that people enter into the market, and, if you like, the contracts with manual laborers, actions for slander or assault, the bringing of lawsuits, the appointment of jurors, and, if necessary, I presume, the imposition of and payment of commercial or maritime taxes, general regulations of the market, the city, and the harbors, and anything like this. Shall we bring ourselves to institute laws for any of these? No, said he. It is not worth giving instruction to men who are noble and good, since in most of these cases the laws will be instituted, they will, I presume, easily discover them. Yes, my friend, and provided God grants them preservation of the laws we described before. If not, they will spend their lives continually instituting and amending a whole host of regulations of this sort, in the belief that they will arrive at the best arrangement. You are saying, said I, that people like this are living like sick people who are not prepared to depart from their degenerate lifestyle because they lack the restraint to do so. Entirely so. And indeed, these people live their lives in a delightful manner, for in spite of any medical treatment, they make no progress, although they do make the diseases more complicated and more extensive. And they are always hoping, whenever someone suggests a remedy, that this is the one that will make them healthy. Yes, said he, this is exactly the sort of thing that happens to people who are sick in this way. What about this? Is it not a delightful feature of these people that what they regard above all as their greatest enemy is the person who speaks the truth? Namely, that until one gives up drunkenness, gluttony, womanizing, and laziness, neither drugs, nor burning, nor cutting, nor indeed any charms or amulets, nor anything else of that sort will be of any benefit at all. Is he talking about then or now? Drugs, burning, and cutting. We have problems with those still today. Gluttony, womanizing, laziness, that'll never go away. Like, you can win the battle, but humanity will never. And so, the same fight 3,000 years ago. Is it not really delightful, said he, since getting annoyed with someone who speaks so well holds no delight? It seems that you are not an admirer of men like this. No, indeed, by Zeus. In that case, you will not praise the city as a whole either, as we said before, if it acts in this way. Or does it not seem to you that those cities that are badly governed and yet direct their citizens not to change the existing state of affairs as a whole, on pain of execution for doing so, are behaving just like those sick people, and whatever is pleased to serve them, even though they are governed in this way, who delights them with flattery, who anticipates their wishes, and is clever at fulfilling them? He will be their good man, wise too in important matters, and will win their respect. Yes, said he, I think they are behaving in the same way. I have no praise whatsoever for them either. And what about those who are willing to serve in cities like these and are eager to do so? Are you not delighted by their courage and humanity? I am, said he, except in cases where they are deceived into believing that they are statesmen just because most people praise them. What are you saying? Can you not sympathize with the men? If a man who does not know how to measure is told by people like himself that he is 6 foot tall, do you think it is possible for him not to believe this about himself? No. Again, I do not think so, said he. Then do not be harsh with them. For people like this are the most delightful of all, instituting laws of the sort we just described, amending them, always believing they will find some way of curtailing corrupt practices in business dealings, and in the other areas I spoke of just now, while being unaware that they really are, as it were, cutting off the head of the hydra. Yes, indeed, said he, that is all they are doing. Well then, said I would not have thought the true legislature needs to trouble himself with this sort of thing in relation to laws or civic affairs, either in a badly governed city or a well-governed one. In the former, because it is of no benefit and achieves nothing, and in the latter, because some of them could be discovered by anyone at all, while the others emerge automatically from the practices described earlier. So we asked what would be left for our legislative process. And I said, for us, there is nothing. But for Apollo, who is in Delphi, there remains the greatest, most beautiful, and primary subjects of legislation. What are they? The foundation of temples, sacrifices, and general care for the gods, demons, and heroes. Then for those who have died, burial rites, and whatever services to the denizens of the other world are needed to keep them well disposed. For obviously we have no knowledge of such matters, nor, as we are founding our city, shall we believe anyone else if we have any sense, nor shall we have recourse to any interpreter except our ancestral one. For this God is surely the ancestral interpreter for all humanity, in such manners, and seated on the navel stone in the middle of the earth, giving his interpretations. Yes, you are expressing that nicely, he said, and that is how it should be done. Well then, said I, although your city would be founded at this stage, dear son of Ariston, you should now proceed to look within it, provided with sufficient light from somewhere. Do this yourself and call upon your brother and Polemarchus and others, and in case we somehow see what precisely justice may be, and injustice too, I suppose, and what the difference between them is, and which of them a man who is to be happy should acquire, whether all gods and men are aware of this or not. You are talking nonsense, said Glaucon, since you promised that you yourself were going to search for this, because it would be an unholy act on your part not to come to aid of justice to the best of your ability in every possible way. True, said I, you have reminded me, and I should act accordingly. But you should all be involved too. This is what we shall do then, said he. Well then, I hope we shall find it in the following way. I think our city, if it has indeed been founded correctly, is perfectly good. It must be, said he. Then it is obvious that it is wise, courageous, sound-minded, and just. Obviously. Is it not the case that if we find some of these qualities in the city, the remainder will be what has not been found? Of course. Well, suppose there were 4 different things, and we were looking for one of them in something or other, and we recognize this one first, and that would be enough for us. But if we had previously recognized the other three, by this fact alone, the object of our search would be recognized too, since obviously it is just the remainder and nothing else. Correct, said he. So, in relation to these excellences, since there are four of them, should we not conduct our search the same way? Obviously. And indeed, it seems to me that wisdom is the first thing that is seen plainly in this, and something unusual becomes evident about it. What? The city we have described is, I think, actually wise, since it is well advised, is it not? Yes. And indeed, it is obvious that being well advised is, in itself, knowledge of some sort. For is it not by ignorance, but by knowledge, that people are well advised? Clearly. But there are many varieties of knowledge in the city. There must be. Now, is it because of the knowledge of its carpenters that a city should be referred to as wise and well advised? Not at all. Because this knowledge is referred to as knowledgeable in carpentry. So, it is not because of all the knowledge dealing with wooden implements and advising on how they might turn out best that a city should be called wise. No, indeed. What about the knowledge dealing with objects made from bronze, from any other knowledge of this sort? It is not any of these either, said he. Nor is it the knowledge dealing with producing crops from the earth, rather because of it is knowledgeable in farming. I think so. What about this? Is there in the city we have just founded any knowledge that is particularly associated with some citizens? Knowledge by which the city is advised, not about some aspect of its affairs, but about the city as a whole, and the manner in which it might best conduct itself towards itself and towards other cities. Well, there is indeed. Well, what is it? And in which citizens does it reside? It is guardianship, said he, and it resides in those who rule, to whom we have just given the name perfect guardians. So what, on account of this knowledge, do you call the city? Well advised, said he, and truly wise. Now, said I, in our city, do you think there will be more bronze workers or more of these true guardians? Far more bronze workers. Indeed, and among those who have some knowledge and are named accordingly, would not these guardians be the fewest in number of them all? The fewest by far. So a city founded on a natural basis would be wholly wise because of the smallest group or part of itself, and the knowledge residing in this presiding, ruling part. And it seems like this class naturally turns out to be the fewest in number, and it is the class that deserves to be allocated this knowledge, which alone, among all other kinds of knowledge, merits the name wisdom. Very true, said he. Well then, I do not know how, but we have found this one of the four. And where is it situated in the city? Well, said he, in my opinion at any rate, it has been discovered quite satisfactorily. Then again, it is not difficult to discern courage itself, and the part of our city in which it resides, on account of which of the city is then called courageous. How so? Who could say that a city is cowardly or courageous unless he had looked into the particular part of that fights for her or goes to war on her behalf? No one would look at anything else. Indeed, the fact that other citizens in the city were more cowardly or courageous would not, I believe, determine whether the city has one quality or the other. It would not. And so a city is courageous by some part of itself, because it has a capacity of this sort in that part, and a capacity which in any situation preserves the opinion about what things should be feared. And these are the same things and the same sorts of things that the legislatures proclaimed whilst educating them. Do you not refer to this as courage? I do not fully understand what you are saying. Please say it once more. I am saying that courage is a sort of preservation. What sort of preservation is it? The preservation of the opinion produced by law through education about what should be feared and what sorts of things they are. And when I said in any situation, I meant that the brave man preserves this opinion faithfully in the face of the pleasure or pain, desire or fear, and never rejects it. I can give you what I regard as an example to illustrate if you wish. Yes, I do. Do you not know that when dyers want to dye wool so that it becomes purple, they first make a selection from all these colors and pick one kind? Wools that are naturally white, and they prepare these in advance by treating them extensively so that they will take on the color as best they can. And they then proceed with dyeing. And whatever is dyed in this manner becomes color fast, with no washing, whether either with detergents or without them, is able to remove the color. Otherwise, well, you know the sorts of things that happens when someone dyes wool of other colors, or even dyes these white wools without preparing them in advance. I know, said he, that they become washed out and they look ridiculous. Then, said I, you should understand that we, to the best of our ability, are also engaged in a process of this sort when we were selecting our warriors and educating them in music and gymnastics. Understand that there was only one objective, that once they had been persuaded, as beautifully as possible by ourselves, they would accept the laws like a die, so that their opinion in relation to what should be feared and in relation to anything else would become color fast, because they had acquired a nature with and an education that was suitable. Then these detergents would not wash this dye out of them, despite their formidable dissolving power. Pleasure, which is more to be feared for doing this than any soda or lye from chloresta. Pain, too, or fear or desire, which are to be feared more than any detergent. Now, a power of this sort, the preservation in any situation of right and lawful opinion as to what should be feared and what should not. This I call courage. And this is what I propose, unless you have some other suggestion. I have nothing to suggest, said he, for I think you regard right opinion concerning these very issues, when it arises without education, as is the case with beasts or slaves, as not entirely stable, and you refer to this not as courage, but as something else. Very true, said I. Then I accept that this is what courage is. And indeed, you should accept it as being civic courage at any rate. And you will then be right to do so, but we shall, if you wish, give a better exposition of this on some other occasion. At the moment, we are not looking for courage, but for justice. And for that inquiry, in my opinion, this is sufficient. That is fine. And that is where we are going to wrap up, right? We have just finished the quest to define courage. What is courage? It is standing for what is right, regardless of the situation, whether it is detrimental to you personally or not. Standing regardless of what happens, being scared and standing there regardless is courage. Knowing that it may end badly for you, through no fault of your own, but taking it on anyway, that is courage. So we have a definition for sure of courage. It has many definitions. It has been defined by many different lives throughout history, and it will be defined going forward by many more different lives. And I cannot wait to see at least part of those played out in real time. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a not too complicated topic. I didn't have a whole lot to add. I don't have a whole lot to add to most of these. We are reading through them to get them on record so that I know what I'm talking about when I talk about these things, so that I can help to dispense a little bit of wisdom, because that is, after all, the main goal. Right? That is why we're doing this, is to get wisdom and dispense wisdom. And if we can do that together, that's a great thing. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.